You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Now, for our listeners who enjoyed the last chat I had with Nick Griffin MEP, we're holding another one on Monday's World at 8, where Nick will be discussing the Banbury Groomings and the European Union. This programme will be recorded from his travels in Italy. Highlights of the news today, Friday 27th of June 2014. 6 men appear in court accused of child sex exploitation in Banbury. 90-year-old dragged off street and raped in Rochdale. Bogus citizenship weddings bring 9,100 illegal migrants to UK. Athens fears a taxpayer revolt as deadline runs out and 2.5 million have yet to file tax returns. Italy, crucifix mandatory, says Padua mayor. Netherlands, Wilders drops campaign to go to Brussels after alliance plan collapse. Abu Qatada not guilty of Jordanian terror plot. Canadian prosecutors pushing for a 10-year sentence for non-violent terrorist. ISIS tries to grab its own air force. Thought for the day, a balancing act gone very wrong. And finally, one for the plods. UK news. 6 men appear in court accused of child sex exploitation in Banbury. The charges relate to 5 girls between 13 and 15 years old and are said to have taken place between 2011 and this year. All of the men, who aged between 19 and 21, were remanded in custody to appear at Oxford Crown Court on July the 4th. The men are Ahmed Hassan Souleh, aged 20, of Glyndebourne Gardens, Banbury, charged with 9 counts of sexual activity with a child. Saeed Salah, aged 20, of Orchard Way, Banbury, charged with 1 count of sexual activity with a child. Mohammed Salah, aged 21, of Orchard Way, Banbury, charged with 2 counts of sexual activity with a child and 1 count of rape of a female under 16. Coudenhove, aged 21, of Broughton Road, Banbury, charged with 1 count of sexual activity with a child, 1 count of causing or inciting a child to engage in sexual activity and 1 count of rape of a female under 16. Kagiso Manasi, aged 20, of Warwick Road, Banbury, charged with 3 counts of sexual activity with a child and 2 counts of causing or inciting a child to engage in sexual activity. Alexandru Nai, aged 19, of Broomway, Banbury, charged with 1 count of sexual activity with a child and 1 count of rape of a child under 16. World at 8. I note that these new Muslim groomings have not hit the headlines like the old dead necrophiliac who cannot speak for himself. Luckily, Saville's financial estate can. No such luck for these victims though. Islam is not made to pay for their misdeeds financially. "90-year-old dragged off street and raped in Rochdale." Police in Rochdale have launched an investigation after a 90-year-old woman was attacked in the street and raped. The woman was attacked as she walked to a butcher's in Spotland Road around 6:45 am on Tuesday to buy a bacon sandwich. She had a pound coin in one hand and a walking stick in the other. A hand was placed over her mouth from behind and she was dragged backwards before she lost consciousness. When she came round, she found she had been pulled to the ground and raped. World at 8. Just plain awful, and no mention of the ethnicity of her attacker, another case which will be kept very quiet until over, even if they get him or them. Bogus citizenship weddings bring 9,100 illegal migrants to UK. Sham marriages to gain British citizenship are happening at an industrial rate of 1 every hour, it was revealed yesterday. Registrars and members of the public reported more than 9,100 bogus weddings last year, but only 90 people were removed, the Home Office Affairs Committee was told. Many more go unreported because Register Office staff fail to tell immigration officials, said Borders Inspector John Vine. World at 8. We have been reporting these sham marriages for years, and this is the result of no one actually listening. Bigots to the one. European news. Athens fears a taxpayer revolt as deadline runs out and 2.5 million have yet to file tax return. With 30th of June looming, about 2,500,000 taxpayers are still to submit their tax returns. The Greek Ministry of Finances is fearing the worst, as it appears that a deadline extension would not necessarily solve the problems. According to accountants, as to Vima Online reports, the self-employed and renters will see their taxation go up from last year, with those on low or medium incomes suffering the most. On the contrary, employers and pensioners will see their taxes remain more or less the same. The ministry estimates that many taxpayers may be hesitant to submit their tax returns, as they might be under the impression that if they delay submission, then the deadlines for payment will also be postponed. However, the ministry has set July the 1st as the date when the first payment must be made. In an effort to convince taxpayers to submit their tax returns, the Finance Ministry announced that the social dividend and family benefits may be at risk. Italy. Crucifix mandatory, says Padua mayor. The mayor of the northern city of Padua declared Wednesday that all public buildings must display a Catholic crucifix. Now every office and every school will get a nice mandatory crucifix donated by the city. Hands off the crucifixes or you will be in trouble, Mayor Massimo Binonci, who is from the anti-immigrant Northern League Party, wrote on his Facebook page. He also posted a picture of himself at a 2009 sit-in while distributing free crucifixes in the nearby town of Abano Terme, where a public school had one removed upon request by a student's family. While its 1948 constitution says Italy is a secular state and that all religions are equal before the law, the government never explicitly abrogated decrees making crucifixes mandatory dating from the preceding fascist regime. As a result, many hospitals, courts and schools still display the Catholic symbol. World date, quite right too. Netherlands. Wilders drops campaign to go to Brussels after alliance plan collapse. PVV leader Geert Wilders will not take a seat in the European Parliament in Brussels. Now his party and the Front National have failed to put together a formal alliance of 7 parties. Wilders, who took ceremonial last place on the PVV's list of candidates for the European Parliament, was elected on preference votes. He had hoped to take a seat in both Brussels and The Hague, but this is impossible under European and Dutch election law. Wilders' decision means Hans Janssen, the anti-Islam academic who was 4th on the PVV's candidates list, will now go to Brussels. Earlier on Tuesday it emerged that the PVV's hope of establishing a 7-party alliance in Brussels together with France's Front National had flopped. World News. Abu Qatada not guilty of Jordanian terror plot. Radical Muslim preacher Abu Qatada has been found not guilty of terrorism offences by a court in Jordan over an alleged plot in 1998. A panel of civilian judges sitting at the State Security Court in Amman cleared him of conspiracy to carry out terrorist acts. Abu Qatada was deported from the UK in July 2013. A verdict on another alleged plot was adjourned till September. The Home Office said Abu Qatada would not be able to return to Britain. This verdict comes after a near-decade-long legal battle to force the radical cleric to face trial in his home country, and will raise concerns that he may use his influence to destabilise the Jordanian state at a time of increasing turmoil on its borders. World date doesn't matter to us. His entire family should be removed from the UK and sent to live in Jordan if they think his actions are okay. They can pay for them, not us. Canadian prosecutors pushing for 10-year sentence for non-violent terrorist. A Toronto man convicted of attempting to join the Somali terrorist group Al-Shabaab should serve no more than 4 years in prison, his lawyer argued Wednesday, claiming his client had engaged only in non-violent terrorism. But federal prosecutors are seeking the 10-year maximum sentence for Mohammed Hassan Hersi, a 28-year-old former security guard who last month became the first Canadian to be convicted for attempting unsuccessfully to join an overseas terrorist group. "I don't know what non-violent terrorism is," Crown Attorney Jim Clark said in response to the defence argument that the sentence should distinguish between violent and non-violent forms of terrorism. All terrorism is inherently violent. People should know that even if they try and join a foreign terrorist group and are unsuccessful, they will be heavily punished for the attempt. The judge reserved her decision until July the 24th. A jury found the Somali Canadian guilty of 2 terrorism-related counts last month after hearing of his plans to join Al-Shabaab. He was also convicted of counselling another person to join. The charge stemmed from the detailed advice he gave an undercover Toronto police officer playing the role of a prospective recruit. World at 8. Send him and his family to Somalia. Don't give any more money or shelter to this family of vipers. Only vipers are more honest. ISIS tries to grab its own air force. In its march to Baghdad, ISIS seized the heavy weapons of a modern army. Now the jihadists are attacking Iraq's biggest air force base and soon could be able to attack from the sky. The Islamic State of Iraq and al-Sham is threatening to take control of Balad Air Base, Iraq's largest airfield and one of America's most important military outposts during its occupation of that country. Today Balad still has plenty of vehicles and aircraft on the base that any terrorist group would covet, including Russian-made transport helicopters, surveillance planes and a fleet of pickup trucks fitted with heavy machine guns. Now that airbase is coming under fire and is in danger of falling into the hands of ISIS, according to US intelligence officers, internal reports from Balad and outside analysts. Reuters reported Wednesday that the base was now surrounded on 3 sides by insurgents and taking heavy mortar fire. We assess the group continues to threaten the airbase and Iraqi security force control of the airbase as it moves south towards Baghdad, a senior US intelligence official told reporters Tuesday. Of course, even if ISIS were to gain control of Balad, there is no guarantee its fighters would know how to operate or maintain the aircraft that are stored there. But an ISIS takeover of Balad would be significant nonetheless. As NBC News reported Tuesday, Iraqi officers say without air support, they are on an equal footing with ISIS fighters. Jessica Lewis, the research director of the Institute for the Study of War and former US Army intelligence officer who served in Iraq, told the Daily Beast it would mean that ISIS can beat the best that the Iraqi army can muster, not just the northern units that have been ignored. It would mean strategic defeat for the Iraqi army. Thought for the day: a balancing act gone very wrong. The plan for Europe is going very well, when with the installation of Jean Claude Juncker as President of the EU, that will be the cherry on the pie, so to speak. Camoron is shown up as the vacillating idiot he is, all speak and no do, which is the classic British stance until too late, and Millipede of course will jump all over him as usual like the rabid Marxist dog he is. In fact, it's all trumping along very nicely according to the Coudenhove-Kalergi plan, which acts like a sergeant major in stripping countries of their national identity and heritage and supplanting it with another. A simplification of course, but the essence of any plan from origins such as these runs along the same lines. This is taken from the article written in 2013 which goes into great detail, which I'm not about to do here, but merely highlight the obvious. Mass immigration is a phenomenon, the causes of which are still cleverly concealed by the system, and the multicultural propaganda is trying to forcefully portray it as inevitable. With this article we intend to prove once and for all that this is not a spontaneous event. What they want to present as an inevitable outcome of modern life is actually a plan conceived around a table and prepared for decades to completely destroy the face of the continent. The Pan-Europe. Few people know that one of the main initiators of the process of European integration was also the man who designed the genocide plan of the peoples of Europe. It is a dark person whose existence is unknown to the masses, but the elite considers him as the founder of the European Union. His name is Richard Coudenhove-Kalergi. His father was an Austrian diplomat named Heinrich von Coudenhove-Kalergi with connections to the Byzantine family of the Kalergis, and his mother the Japanese Mitsu Aoyama. Kalergi, thanks to his close contacts with all European aristocrats and politicians, due to the relationships of his nobleman diplomat father, and by moving behind the scenes, away from the glare of publicity, he managed to attract the most important heads of state to his plan, making them supporters and collaborators for the project of European integration. In 1922 he founded the Pan-European movement in Vienna, which aimed to create a new world order based on a federation of nations led by the United States. European integration would be the first step in creating a world government. Among the first supporters, including Czech politicians Thomas Masaryk and Edvard Benz, and the banker Max Warburg, who invested the first 60,000 marks. The Austrian Chancellor Ignaz Seipel and the next President of Austria Karl Renner took the responsibility for leading the pan-European movement. Later, French politicians such as Léon Blum, Aristide Briand, Alcide de Gasperi, etc. will offer their help. With the rise of fascism in Europe, the project was abandoned and the pan-European movement was forced to dissolve. But after the Second World War, Kalergi, thanks to the frantic and tireless activity and the support of Winston Churchill, the Jewish Masonic Lodge B'nai B'rith, and major newspapers like the New York Times, the plan manages to be accepted by the United States government. The CIA later undertakes the completion of the project. The essence of the Kalergi plan. In his book Praktischer Idealismus, Kalergi indicates that the residents of the future United States of Europe will not be the people of the old continent, but a kind of subhumans, products of miscegenation. He clearly states that the peoples of Europe should interbreed with Asians and coloured races, thus creating a multinational flock with no quality and easily controlled by the ruling elite. Now it's apparent even to the dimmest dimmy that this is what's happening now and has been since the end of the last war, when fascism, nationalism and patriotism became the new buzzword of hatred and anti-European peoples, whilst pro became the buzzword of the liberal Marxists, pro-homosexual, pro-black, pro-immigration, pro-multiracial society, and yet more coals of fire to heap on an unwary and exhausted peoples of Europe, already suffering from the effects of killing their own kind on a massive scale, and I am not referring to the Holocaust. Now, I'm not Jew bashing and indeed never have. But the US is a prime example of the reverse of freedom of thought and speech and the domination of the Coudenhove-Kalergi thought-based Zionists who adopt the principles of the Kalergi plan and have done so since its innovation. Now, by Zionists, I'm taking the liberty of calling these people Zionist Jews, when in fact many, if not most, do not acknowledge their Jewishness at all. Many, in fact, reject the religion in which they were born and in reality have no right, other than their birth, to call themselves Jewish, as they are not practising Jews. You cannot be a Marxist and practice religion. Apparently it is the opiate of the people. It is the state you worship, so in effect you are not a son of Judah. Now I personally, and this is not a British National Party thing, have no time for people who reject their faith for a human holy state, yet cash in at every titch and turn on being either a survivor or just Jewish, as if it places them well above everybody else, and it doesn't. But the state in Hollywood, especially run by these sort of Zionists, has reached the stage of what we are told happened in the Third Reich in Germany in reverse. You have to obey and worship at that altar or no altar at all. Reference Gary Oldman, the latest blurb on him. Mel Gibson has suffered from telling the truth as he is entitled to see it, and now you can see how near to our fascist friends the Jews of Hollywood have become. Total financial and emotional dictators. Now the true Jewish peoples of Israel are a totally different thing. They fought for their lands and they should keep them. I have a lot of time for these Jewish people as they adhere to the Talmud for the most part and have not rejected their God. So no, Jew bashing is not what I do. Back to Kalergi, and it must be plain that the powers that be are using massive immigration, mainly of the Muslim persuasion, to outbreed and colonise Europe under the guise of helping this particular parasite. I find it surprising that especially in Eastern Europe, which suffered under the communist regime, they're either rolling over for Islam or fleeing to the UK. History is not repeating itself, is it? The EU is like an amoeba. It spreads and divides within and without. It started with an ethic and progressed with financial greed, and it doesn't hesitate to use financial blackmail if any country steps out of line. And the sad thing is we are all paying for them to do so. If the UK stopped foreign aid, left the EU under a referendum and refused to pay any fines to them, we might suffer a couple of years, or rather the greedy corporations might, but after that and after rebuilding our own infrastructure to exclude Europe from taking over, we would be in better shape than we are now. Our EU migrants, which include millions from the third world, would have to leave, and certain rules would make it uncomfortable for millions of Muslims to live here. So many would leave, and there would be less drain on our health services, public services, education and the benefit system. There would be more money for us and ours. We would not reject Europe as we are European, but as Europe becomes more Asian and Muslim, what do? Do we just run alongside a train which is speeding up for a crash, or get off? The Kalergi plan was put off because of fascism or nationalism, and yet the biggest offender for both was Germany, which heads in effect the EU now. It was a plan put together by people with more brains and influence than I, and is very clever in its very awfulness and the flag under which it flies, which is obvious: slavery of the white races by subjugation and media blackmail. If a politician was standing 70 years ago and said his manifesto was to 1. Encourage massive immigration into this land until overfull, and 2. Rewrite our constitution to not only accommodate but prioritise these peoples, and 3. Make sure millions of taxpayers' pounds were going to be fed into an institution that would ensure the demise of the UK and Europe in its original forms, and 4. He would make it his business to change the entire social structure of England, in that he would encourage homosexuality, mixed marriages, abortions, drunkenness and in essence everything that the Christian Bible forbids, whilst discouraging, forcibly if necessary, our previous social norms, history and culture being promoted, and even our religion. Put this with the media, which has the attitude of a lady of the night, and a cheap one at that, and would you vote for this man? Would you even give him house room or airtime? I don't think so. And that is why the Coudenhove-Kalergi plan for the New World Order is so very clever. It appeals to the liberal and the person who wants to appear popular. In short, most politicians who are not patriotic but just plain greedy. Because to adhere to this plan brings massive rewards and kudos. But not for the truth-sayers, patriots or nationalists, as we are the sworn enemies of this plan, which is why we are reviled. The Coudenhove-Kalergi plan is at the bottom of the Frankfurt School of Indoctrination, the Marxist pomposity, the diversity rush of the last 30 years for educating teachers and trainers, the multiracial oil slick and the struggle to pay for it all, and we are all in fact paying vast amounts of money to be recolonised and restructured. Why? Because not to adhere to this plan in one form or another, whether in Europe or the United Kingdom, is to be labelled a racist, a retard, a moron, a knuckle-dragger, a Nazi, a neo-Nazi, anti-Jewish, Islamophobe, gun-toting loner, and worse, much worse. It is to have members of your family put you in Coventry and tell you to take the consequences. It is jobs folding up mysteriously. It is people literally crossing over to avoid you. This is what happened in the Third Reich to people who did not take too kindly to Adolf. So this plan uses and abuses the powers it so apparently hated during the Third Reich to great effect. Give a people something to hate and they do it very well, even when it is them who will suffer. Of course, look at the ethnicity of the guy who invented it, part Austrian, like Adolf, and part Japanese, the most nationalistic people on God's earth, and you wonder why. Clearly a misfit with a superiority complex, but a very clever one. Whatever you believe or understand, our England is not going the way it should. Our people are not going the way they should, and our structure and society are beholden to strangers who do not only change them but charge vast amounts of money to do so. We are prisoners in an iron mask, but even he had hope, and that's something we must not lose. Hope. Hope that someday someone will listen, someone will print us, someone will want us and understand us as we understand our country and its people. And finally, one for the plods. Woman. Is there a problem, officer? Officer. Ma'am, you were speeding. Woman. Oh, I see. Officer. Can I see your licence, please? Woman. I'd give it to you, but I don't have one. Officer. Don't have one? Woman. Lost it 4 times for drunk driving. Officer. I see. Can I see your vehicle registration papers, please? Woman. I can't do that. Officer. Why not? Woman, I stole this car. Officer, stole it? Woman, yes, I killed and hacked up the owner. Officer, you what? Woman, his body parts are in plastic bags in the trunk if you want to see. The officer looks at the woman, slowly backs away to his car and calls for backup. Within 5 minutes, 5 police cars circle the car. A senior officer slowly approaches the car, clasping his half-drawn gun. Officer 2, ma'am, could you step out of your vehicle, please? The woman steps out of her vehicle. Woman, is there a problem, sir? Officer 2, one of my officers told me that you've stolen this car and murdered the owner. Woman, murdered the owner? Officer 2, yes, could you please open the trunk of your car, please? The woman opens the trunk, revealing nothing but an empty trunk. Officer 2, is this your car, ma'am? Woman, yes, here are the registration papers. The first officer is stunned. Officer 2, one of my officers claims that you do not have a driving licence. The woman digs out her handbag and pulls out a clutch purse and hands it to the officer. The officer snaps open the clutch purse and examines the licence. He looks quite puzzled. Officer 2, thank you, ma'am, one of my officers told me you didn't have a licence, that you stole this car and that you murdered and hacked up the owner. Woman, I bet you the lying bastard told you I was speeding too. You've been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozart and I and the team at World at 8 and Radio Britain wish you all a very happy and a very safe weekend.